Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
Hello, everybody out there. I see you. I see you in your kitchen. I see you in your car. I see you walking your dog. I don't really see you. That's the government you're thinking of. This is Jeff Severance Gunsel, and this is the Overtired podcast. And I am here with Christina Warren. Hello, Christina.
Hello, Jeff. Happy New Year again. How are you?
I thank you. I thank you. It is still a happy New Year. See, I celebrate New Year officially on my birthday, which is January 16th. So
Yes, which I knew that this was coming up because I was looking at my calendar and it populated in my calendar and I was like, oh, I got to remember to wish Jeff happy birthday. Um, so
yep.
happy birthday early.
Thank you. It's a great thing because I have usually completely bailed on my initial idea of resolutions for the year by my birthday. And my birthday allows me a chance to declare that this is really the beginning of the year and make a less and make some kind of resolution with less hubris.
I like it.
Maybe. Yeah. Something I can keep too.
Less hubris and keeping things more honest, which I think is good because I was curious. Like I gave up on New Year's resolutions like in my teens, I think probably. Um, do you ever really like try to have them, or is that something that you like?
I do try to have them, but they don't really go anywhere. What I've come to believe is that it's worth it just to have the thoughts about what is it
Yes.
I would like to change, and then to just let them go, and maybe it'll take care of itself over the course of the year.
Totally.
My wife has the most amazing resolutions. One year it was to park better.
Oh, I love that.
Just generally to park closer to the curb. And another year it was to watch nationally televised events like a normal American, where she watched every single thing from the Golden Globes to the Super Bowl.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I always try to take inspiration because I think those are just genius
Okay.
resolutions. So I can never find mine.
No, see, okay, those are awesome. So I love that actually. And so, because I'm like you, like I like to have things that I think about and I have goals. I stopped probably when I was around like 15 or so, like actually writing out like resolutions because I realized I'm not doing a great job keeping these and then it would just make me feel bad. And so I was like, don't do things that make you feel bad. But I do still in my mind, like, oh, these are my goals for the new year and this and that. And there are things that I have like goals from 3 years ago, like start a newsletter. And I'm like, still working on that. But I love your wife's because those seem like things that are actually actionable and that could also have some sort of impact on your life. I mean, I don't know if like watching live events does, except like then like more about the water cooler conversations and the topical
Totally.
things. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, totally.
So, but those seem like low stakes things. I wonder too. You'd have to ask her about this. I would love to ask her myself, but you can ask her. Like, do you, or even based on your observations, the fact that she has kind of these really interesting resolutions. Do you think that helps her achieve some of her other goals that might be bigger, broader? Like the fact that she can say, "My resolution is to park better." She does. She works on it. Do you think that helps maybe with follow through on maybe some of the bigger goals she wants to achieve?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I will say that even a sort of silly resolution like I want to park better, which is perfectly reasonable. I don't mean silly like it's dumb.
No, totally.
But it's silly. It's fun.
Right. We just mean insofar as like
it's whimsical.
Right.
By the end of the year, when you realize she's still doing it, it's like, for me, I'm always like, man, I gotta think of something, because at the beginning I thought, well, that's not enough. But by the end of the year, I'm going, no, that actually feels like a lot.
No, I was gonna say,
I would have been
'cause it
glad
is.
to be there.
Well, no, well, this is kind of my thought, right? Like, is that is like enough, like, especially if you, because at that point, it's no longer even a resolution. It's like that has been a behavior change, which I
Yes.
think is even better than a resolution. Because I think a lot of times and I'm including myself in this, I've viewed resolutions as like things to do. And like things to like seeing like, okay, I need to check this off, right? Like I need to do this, be one and done. Whereas what she's doing is actually saying, I want to change my behavior in a certain way.
Yes.
Which I think is actually much more important, harder, and like much better, right? Like I think that's actually a way better way of viewing things.
Well, and I think, I mean, at least as an observer, like it's it's absent all the like, because I will be better if I X,
Right.
right? They're usually not things that like are going to carry the weight of, will I be a better person? How can I be a
No,
better
totally.
person? You know? And I love
Except
that.
except by being able to successfully change your behavior, you are, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes. Every time you do that, it's data in your
it is that,
brain.
and every time you do that is also, I think, this is why I'd be curious to know if like it's helped her. And I guess resolutions is probably the wrong word, but I would be curious to know if that has helped her make behavior changes in other ways, right?
Hmm.
Because if you could do it for these things that seem small, right, but
Yeah.
you can do it and really carry through, right? Like I failed at this, but I'm going to get back on it. When I had my nails painted for GitHub Universe, I didn't bite my nails for like the
Mm,
entire time that I had those gel nails on. And
yeah.
but as soon as it chipped off, I then immediately bit my nails again. And it was awful
Mm,
and I was really upset with myself, but I was like, okay, well this is just, I'm going to start getting my nails done and keeping them up. And I'd wanted to actually get them done before it was chipping, but I couldn't find a place close by like soon enough for when it was happening. And then by the time it happened, I was like, all right, I'll just, then I got sick and everything, but I'm gonna like, this is
yeah.
actually okay. So this is one of my behavior changes. I don't think that I will reasonably, probably at least for a long time anyway, I don't know if I will ever be able to stop biting my nails.
Hmm.
However, when I had the gel tips, which that and I've had painted nails before, but it hadn't really worked this well. Like I really was able to, at least for a month, change my behavior. And I do wonder,
Mm,
like, this would be a thing. Like, okay, I might not ever be able to completely prevent myself from like biting my nails. It's a nervous habit. It's something I've been doing literally my entire life. Like I before I bit my nails, I picked my nails,
yeah.
and so I don't know if that's ever anything that'll go away, but I do feel like I could, by going every 3 weeks to get my nails done, like
Yeah.
that could be part of it, right? Because if they're painted, they look a certain way that I'm not. So, um, I like that. I like that rather than my resolution to being I'm going to bite my nails. I'm not going to stop biting my nails. Like I'm going to, commit to getting my nails done every so often.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll
That's
be.
that sounds way more fun too,
Mhm.
right? Like you handle it, but you also have fun handling it. I mean, that's like, it's also similar to, what is the thing that dude who wrote Atomic Habits, his thing about habit stacking, but also his thing about the environment, your environment, that like he would say, or he says, there's not like a type of person who's good at holding their resolutions, right? There's a type of person who's good at creating the environment wherein they can hold their resolutions, and in a way you're doing that by just making sure you get those nails those nails done.
Yeah.
And that's like way more fun because it's not loaded with like, oh god, tried to stop biting my nails.
It's like, no,
Ugh.
I'm not even gonna attach that. I'm just gonna say, okay, I'm gonna get my nails done every 3 weeks, and maybe that will, if I do it long enough, there will be a real behavior change, right? Like maybe that
Right.
would be the real goal. Maybe at a certain point, if I didn't go every 3 weeks and something chipped, then maybe I would finally be past that point where like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing exactly what I'm
Yeah.
doing right
Yeah.
now,
Sure.
which listeners can't see, but I'm like literally I'm like looking
Right
at a nail.
now. Live.
I'm like, ooh, I see a little bit of white. That's because I bite them to the quick, and I'm like, ooh, I
Yeah.
see a tiny bit of white. I could totally bite this now. And yeah,
Yeah. Oh man, you're reminding me I need to put a pedicure on my birthday list.
ooh, yeah.
I've had two now in the last year and a half. I'd never had a pedicure before, and I don't know what toxic masculinity was keeping me from doing that, but what an amazing thing,
I
except for that it tickles.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind getting that done just in terms of I guess like having like them like clean stuff up. My toes are terrible. My feet in general are terrible, which is we talked about this because I discovered this because this was a horrific discovery that I did not make, that one of my friends in informed me about. But I talked about this on a edition of the podcast like a year and a half ago. I'm on WikiFeet.
Wiki
Um,
feet.
yeah, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious because like
How are
my
you on Wiki feet?
somebody submitted my photos and thinks I'm notable enough. I don't know.
That's amazing.
Somebody went through all my Instagram photos and all of my like Twitter things and
Oh,
submitted any photos of my toes. It's bizarre and it's
that
gross.
is, wow.
It was very disturbing. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
that was one of the most disturbing things I've ever learned, and I was not at all like happy to learn that. But also, I was a little bit I was amused because my feet are absolutely my worst feature. Like my toes overlap. Like I don't have attractive feet. Like there's
Mm.
nothing attractive about them. Like like if I had longer nails and painted nails, like I don't have ugly hands or ugly fingers. Like that's fine. But like my feet are not attractive. And so why anybody would want to look at my feet is just
Wiki
yeah.
feet. Oh my God. It's just like what my brain is doing is going through the decision patterns of whoever was responsible for that. And then
Mhm.
the action, the workflow itself.
Yep.
And then the horrible conclusion.
100%. And then it always reminds me of the Great King of the Hill episode, where Peggy becomes a foot model unexpected, like unknowingly, starts making fetish films because of
Oh
her
my
giant
God.
feet, not realizing thinking that people like them because they're beautiful, not realizing people get off on them because they're terrible. Um,
Oh my God.
and yeah, it's a great episode. Um,
Wow. Okay. So we've entered a total cultural corner there. I had forgotten existed, but
Yeah, that I'd forgotten existed too until you said pedicure. But you should get a pedicure for sure. Treat yourself. Treat yourself for your birthday. Treat yourself.
I want to get myself up on Wiki feet.
Absolutely. See, listeners, if Jeff posts photos of his feet, please submit him.
Yep,
No,
that's
don't
all my
actually.
Instagram's gonna
No,
be.
no, don't actually do that because when you find that out about it's horrifying.
Yeah, it's not. No, that's
It's not at
horrible.
all like yeah,
I'm
not
just
even
saying if both the other co-hosts were also on Wiki feet, maybe it takes some of the sting and the weird out, or
right.
it adds much more weird.
Yep,
You be the judge, audience.
I agree.
All right, well, good check-in. I'm gonna still put pedicure
You
on
definitely
my
should.
list.
Yeah.
I haven't
Um,
found the place I love yet. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's the thing too. Okay, so you're gonna be looking for pedicure. I'm gonna be trying to find a good manicurist. I'm probably gonna have to go to Bellevue, which is like the bougie
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
town like over the lake. But
Bougie. Yeah.
mhm,
All right.
I,
All right.
I've had to come to terms with the fact that I'm becoming just like a rich Bellevue mom, and I don't like that because I like to live in the city and whatnot. But there's just a lot of
Should get a
stuff.
minivan.
Oh fuck no.
Oh, they're the best.
Oh, absolutely not. Under no
I
circumstances.
am long past needing one because my boys are both teenagers and one of them's practically out the door, but I fucking love minivans. Thanks for asking. Okay, let's take a little break to do a podcast swap. This week's swap is with the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast. Do you follow Apple News? Do you listen to podcasts? Well, I already know the answer to that one. But there's a podcast all about Apple News that we would like you to check out. It's the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast. And when they say daily, they mean it for the most part, Monday through Friday. That's reasonable. Each of those days, they hit you with 20 minutes of talk, the most interesting Apple stories. They've been doing it since 2014. And that's like, they had the announcement of the Apple Watch. Remember the free U2 album nobody wanted? Get that thing off of my computer. The announcement of Apple TV Plus, the transition to Apple Silicon. I mean, all these things that have happened have been covered by the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast. It's ripped from the virtual pages of MacObserver.com. Host Ken Ray brings in Mac Observer staffers and other tech types for quick, informative, and entertaining talk centered on the Apple and related stories of the day. So if you follow Apple News and you listen to podcasts, again, you're already busted on that one. Put this in your ear. The Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast online at MacObserver.com or wherever you get podcasts. Well, what do you want to talk about?
I guess that was kind of our mental health corner, I
think that
guess.
I love the idea of that standing in for mental health.
Honestly, I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
Okay, so on our topic list, you have Chat GPT, and this I want to hear about
Yes.
because you've been going. You said that this is like taken over your life over the last week, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear more about it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what, and just the footnote is this is not one of the existential conversations about ChatGPT. I like kind of had that experience in my own head initially, and then wanted to kind of start trying it. And what I've been using it for the last week is like tons of coding help, basically. And so like here's my deal, my sort of level of literacy when it comes to programming. I have a comfort level with Python. I couldn't just write you a Python script. I mean, that was 10 or 15 lines. I could write you one that was 2 or 3. I have a comfort with bash scripting. I may learn that mostly through Stack Overflow, and borrowing code from people that were, kind enough to offer it to me. And I generally know what a computer is capable of doing and how you talk to it, right? Like what can you ask a computer to do reasonably, right? I know these things, but I always need help to actually do them. And so until recently, that would be, maybe I had a friend like Brett, and Brett and I have worked together on a project. So maybe I'd just be like, I'd call Brett, I'd be like, run the clock. You're on the clock. I want you to help me figure out the last bit of this script. Or I don't understand how this particular function works. I'm just having all this trouble. And Brett would very kindly help me out. If I didn't have Brett, I have Stack Overflow. But I've always thought of myself as someone who, if I just had someone next to me all the time who could code to my specifications, I could do so much for myself and for my workflow that I cannot otherwise do, because I'm too slow or because it's too much of a pain in the ass to search out the answer. And so it is in that sort of context that I turned to Chat GPT last week, first with a script I needed but didn't have. It was very simple. I was actually doing some budgeting, and I wanted to be able to quickly throw a number into my terminal and have that number be turned into the total with sales tax. So, looking at some of this, $15.99, I put it in, comes out, and it adds it to my clipboard, the whole bit, right? And so I wrote this paragraph about what I wanted it to do. Ends with it putting the amount onto my clipboard so I can then paste it into You Need a Budget, YNAB, my YNAB software. It did it in about 5 minutes. And then I was able to kind of do some finessing, add a few features, kind of do a little bit of yes-anding a la Brett Terpstra. And pretty soon I had this pretty complex script for what I'm normally able to produce. I had to run it and get errors and run the errors by ChatGPT. So it's like I still needed to know how the process works, right? And I needed to be able to read an error enough to know that, like, oh, this error is something I should run by ChatGPT, or this error is just a stupid thing I did and I can fix it myself. And so I started with this like sales tax script. Then I took an old script I had from my journalism days, like a bash script, and it was just something that used this. There's this amazing tool called CSV Kit. It's created by Christopher Grosskopf, who does a lot of like news nerd programming. And it's just a suite of tools to work with CSV files, or without opening an Excel file to convert it to CSV, all this different stuff. And I used to always, when I got a new data set, I always did this like audit using a few of the CSV Kit tools that would kind of just give me like, here's like, the most common values for each column. It's like everything. It was like a 2 or 3 page like audit report, right? And that was written in Bash. Wrote it totally using Stack Overflow. And by the way, one of those questions per our conversation last week turned into one of that dude's weirds videos of my Stack Overflow questions. And what you do is you just, you type an input file, you type an output file, and it creates a text file data audit of the data you just got. Super useful, super simple. Even today, though, I can't read that bash file. Like if I try to read it, I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck this stuff is. I basically treated Stack Overflow by ChatGPT and went like line by line.
Right.
And so I was looking at it, I'm like, you know what this script doesn't have, and I've never done, is one of those things where if I type, the name of the script and then dash dash help, it tells me what this thing is and what the correct usage is. And so I was like, I don't really know how to do those things. So I was like, ChatGPT, how do you add a help function to your data? I said, well, it turns out you add a help function. I was like, cool. What does that look like? They gave me an example, and I'm like, cool. What would it look like for this script? And I just plugged the whole script in, right? And it gave me text for a help function that is now part of my script. And so that's some of how I've been using it. Now, the other way that I've been using it is APIs or something where it's like, I 1000% understand how an API works, why it exists, what you do when you're calling an API. I mean, I get it. Like conceptually, I totally get it. And I can usually make simple requests just off the documentation because one would hope the documentation was good enough to help you make simple requests. But what I did is I took a list of like 10 APIs that I've used in the past, and I just said, show me a complex API call for the Airtable API.
Mm-hmm.
Show me a complex call for the Twitter API, for the, I just like went down the road. And I learned so much by looking at, because it'll show me a complex call, and then it will tell me in plain language what it's doing. And so I was able to do that with a bunch of APIs, which allowed me to kind of tighten up a few API calls I make as part of my workflow. It was just this loving friend. and the fact that you could yes and that fucking thing to death. I mean, I can continue. I remember one of the things I tend to do is like, if there's an API I want to know a lot about, I'll start with show me a complex API. And I'll say, now show me 10 features you didn't show me in the last one. Right. And then be like, now show me 5 features you didn't show me in the last one. And you can just keep going in it. And what's funny is I started to think it was human because when I'm working with someone like Brett, there's a point pretty early on where you just feel bad. Like, I'm sorry I'm bugging you with all these remedial fucking questions that like are a little bit beyond what I could have Googled, but not too far beyond. Right. So I found myself wanting to ask nicely. But then I was like, that's fucked up. And so I just started being really straight. Like it would have been as a text, if this were a text conversation, I would have way too little affect and everyone would wonder what I meant. But with this thing, I'm just like, yeah, now show me 5 more. Now show me 5 more, sucker. Come on, motherfucker, show me 5 more. I bet you're not done. Like that's essentially what that became my my sort of attitude in using Chat GPT. And the one thing I regret is that I had put a Firefox extension on that allows you to download your different chats and as markdown files.
Right.
And I'd been doing that pretty faithfully, but I had built up quite a bit of questions. And today, they've hopefully temporarily made it so you could not see or interact with those previous chats because of the overload that they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little scared because I've gotten quite good and clean at essentially creating for myself documentation on an API or on a certain, feature or whatever by asking very specific questions that it allows you to build on it. You can build on previous questions. And so anyway, I have just found, and unselfconsciously, I don't care that I can now write scripts that are mostly existent because of Chat GPT. That's fine. I knew that I wanted him, and I know how to think in that way. Hold on, that's my mom calling.
Sure.
I feel good about myself because I know what it is I need to ask, and that itself is half the work. And so I'm putting that out to you. It's a beautiful new life I'm living if they can just keep this thing online, which seems to be a struggle right now.
Yeah. I know some stuff about that I can't talk about in terms of like the strain that things are under, but yes. um uh they've said this publicly, so this isn't me sharing anything out of school, but the success of this took everyone by surprise because it completely, I think, surpassed everyone's expectations.
Because they didn't realize they were changing society and how it functions.
Well, I think they did. I think that for a lot of people,
Crazy.
and this is what Sam Altman mentioned this, and I think I'm stealing from him. But someone else had mentioned this too. Like the functionality already kind of existed. Like Copilot already did a lot of what you're talking about. And in fact,
Yes.
Copilot Labs, which is a VS Code extension, which has been out for a few months now, has had which basically does like experimental features, which has had a feature like explain for a while that'll let you, highlight a block of code and then it'll explain it to you, very much like exactly what you were using Copilot for. And
Yeah.
it's had and Hey GitHub is a thing that we announced at GitHub Universe, which will also be very similar to kind of this thing where you can kind of talk to Copilot and have it give you responses and whatnot. So a lot of these models were already kind of available. Granted, Copilot costs money, but these things were possible. The interface was different, and I think that's what has changed things with this is by making it a chatbot, which is really smart. The interface
Yeah.
I think was the perfect thing to kind of go mainstream in a way that I don't think I certainly didn't anticipate it taking. I knew it would be big, and I knew all this stuff would be big. I've been really, really
Mm-hmm.
bullish on AI for the last couple of years, actually largely because of GPT-3 and the things that I've seen companies building, also things like Stable Diffusion. Like I'm somebody who tends to be skeptical a lot of times, but this has been an area where I've absolutely not been, because like you, when I've played around with it and I've seen the results, I've just gone, okay, this is like an iPhone level type of thing, right? This is the sort of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're the same, but I'm just saying like in my mind, when you think of technological advancements, like this feels AI, this next generation of natural language AI feels like an iPhone type of moment, right? But
Yeah.
I
It
feel like
does.
ChatGPT, which is still very, very primitive, which is what makes it so exciting to me, I think is the such a great interface for showing what the power of these models are, because everything else has
Mm-hmm.
required either you to know a little bit of something, be have a code editor and an extension up, or be using something like Dolly 2, which they give you free credits, but it's also takes a little bit of time. It feels different. This, I think, just the chat nature of it, and the instantaneous nature of it, and the fact that, like you said, you can get it to do so many different things is really,
Yeah.
really impressive, to the point that, yeah, people are now building so many things on top of it. It'll be interesting to see what OpenAI decides to do in terms of, I think that they probably will always have some sort of free tier, but it'll be interesting to see like how they start to rate limit stuff. Because you're already seeing businesses starting to basically be like, yeah, we're building off of this, which I think it's fine to do the model, but it's like the compute resources
Uh-huh. Yeah.
have a very real cost. That's the thing that people don't understand enough about AI stuff, is that, and one of the reasons why, frankly, it's harder to do these things locally. When we talked about one of the iOS apps that does Stable Diffusion locally on the iPhone last week, as was my a couple weeks ago rather, was my pick of the week. Draw Things, which is a great app, and you can
Yeah.
definitely, if you were to massage things enough, you could get some of those models and sizes that you could run locally, like on your local machine. The problem is that A, that takes up a lot of resources and time and whatnot, and then to update it would take bandwidth, but B, like so it's just not going to be feasible in a lot of situations. But for these things to work, what makes them so magical is that they are doing all this stuff, in the cloud, and there's that's a finite resource, and there's like a hard cost to that stuff. So as this stuff grows, that's I
Yeah.
I think that not just the OpenAI stuff, but any of these services, we'll start to see them struggle a little bit until people can figure out how to scale them. But it's super exciting. But I love hearing about this, and I love that you were using these for these reasons. If you haven't played with Copilot,
No, I
definitely.
haven't. I should get there next,
No,
shouldn't I?
you should do it, because I think that would be, because it lives in VS Code, but you can also use it with JetBrains and with NeoVim, and it'll do very similar things to what ChatGPT is doing. In that case, it's more predictive in terms of, like, if you're typing something, it'll kind of autocomplete for you
Yeah.
in some ways. But you can also have it explain things, and you can even kind of like ask it specifically to do stuff for you like that. So it's got some similarities. Like I said, like the explain feature in the labs, you can highlight a block of code, and then it'll give
Mm-hmm.
you like the real, language reaction is great. And Hey GitHub is going to bring some of that stuff to it too. But I love how you're using
That's awesome.
ChatGPT, and I love, honestly, like, it's funny because internally, we never wanted to draw allusions to Stack Overflow because we want to be respectful of them and everything. But you're not the first person who's drawn kind of comparisons between things that you have been finding out from, ChatGPT
Yeah.
and using it the same way that many of us have used Stack Overflow and things like that,
Yep. Yep.
which is great. But I really, the fact a it's great for Brett not to be bothered as much, but also like you've gotten a lot out of it and you've learned. I mean
A lot. Oh, I've learned a ton.
that's the thing I think that enough people don't talk about when we talk about like AI stuff. We focus on the jobs it will displace. We focus on the plagiarism and the other stuff that it will do. And we focus on all these negatives, like all these instances where people are not going to have to learn. And there is truth to that. I'm not discounting that at all. But I also think that there's truth, and we don't talk enough about it. Scenarios like yours, where you've learned a ton now and you've been able to do
Mm-hmm.
things that you were not doing beforehand, right? It's not like you were
Right.
learning that stuff beforehand. You were asking Brett, you were doing other things. It's not like you're really grokking it, right? So
Right.
the net positive on this is that stuff is done faster and better, and you've got things that are going to be working the way you want to. But also, like you've learned a lot too,
Totally.
it sounds like have a much better comprehension of what you've actually done than before. When you were just putting together, these complicated bash scripts that you're like, I know it works, but I don't know what it says.
Yeah, in fact, I was like, oh, I should finally write comments for this bash script, and I'll go through each thing here in ChatGPT so I understand it, and then I'll see if I feel like I can put my own words to it. I mean, there's certainly like I certainly have instances where I would pause before
Hmm.
using what was there, and I'm always testing it. I mean, I'm not asking it to do something where the output is something really critical, you know.
Right. Well, that's the
Um,
thing, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And sometimes the only tricky thing is the explanations are so accurate sounding. They can sometimes be
yeah,
wrong. But I think that
yeah,
for most of
right.
what you're doing, I don't think that's a problem at all. So,
Yeah, what I'm essentially doing is, okay, ChatGPT said I should do this. Let's go over here and test it. No, that's not working. Let's go back to ChatGPT. Like the real thrill is it gives you code that produces an error. You give it the error and then it gets it right. It's almost like that is why it's like having someone next to you, right? Where it's just like a
exactly.
person, not a bot. And I definitely am cautious of like the like white male threat of like that you sound awful confident, this must be true.
Well, but it's been designed in a way that it is, and it's kind
Yeah.
of it's kind of fun in some ways, right? Because it does sound like just completely like likewise. I found with most programming stuff, at least at the level that I'm doing things at, and I'm doing things at a very similar level that you're doing things at. I think that it's fairly reliable. And again, you test things, not running things in production
It's
before
been
things have been tested and whatnot. But there have been some circumstances where it's been wrong. But at least from my this is anecdotal, but from my experiences, it's a lot more accurate in terms of like explaining code blocks and whatnot than it is in terms of like because it can sound just as accurate explaining, like Nietzsche or Kafka,
yeah,
right?
yeah, right, 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 right.
Where it can also sound very, very big, but
Yes.
it's funny. Joanna Stern from Wall Street Journal did a great video where she used ChatGPT to write to try to see if she could use it to pass AP English. And so she went to an AP English class in New York City, and she used it to write an essay. And she asked the teacher, she was like, would you have caught that this was an AI? And he said no. He's like, I gotta be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have. Now he did mark it down. He gave her like a 3, which is a passing grade. It's like like a B or a C. And it because he was wanting to. The prompt was actually really great. It's one that I wish I would have had in high school, which was comparing Ferris Thursday Off with the Metamorphosis and talking about like existentialism and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I actually again I would have loved
That's
that
awesome.
in AP English. Like that would have been like my dream because that's one of my favorite movies ever, and I love
So
it.
good.
But the essay that the AI wrote confused the characters of Cameron and Ferris a few times and got some other
Mm,
inaccuracies.
yeah.
And so and those are things that are going to happen, right? But like the bulk of it, like he was like, yeah, I probably I wouldn't have this wouldn't have flagged to me that this was an AI, um, which is concerning to a certain extent. Although I think it should also be maybe reaffirming that it's like, okay, even though this would not have been caught by a plagiarism detector, at least yet. And even though this is something that, like, uh, what was I going to say? So even though obviously people could use this to cheat or whatnot, and plagiarism detectors didn't catch it, it's still it might have given a passing grade, but it still wasn't like a good essay, right? Like it's not like
Yeah.
somebody's gonna write to me, I care much less about if somebody's good look, because if somebody's gonna use people cheat. If they're gonna use a tool like that to cheat, they're gonna cheat, right? I think I'd be much more concerned if people were being able to create like Pulitzer worthy work. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
That
Right.
would be much more concerning to me than
Yeah.
if like, okay, you're giving an essay that's grammatically correct and that has some decent sentence structure, but has factual errors and some other things, right? That a human being who didn't research, like that a kid who frankly didn't watch the movie or read the book, mistakes they might have
Right.
made, right? Which, let's be honest, that's a very common scenario anyway. So some of
Sure.
the like furor over that I think is completely overblown, because I'm like, you're making a lot of
Yeah.
assumptions about high schoolers that I remember very distinctly being a high schooler and a college student, and you know, the shortcuts kids take, like, don't
Yeah.
underestimate that. You know, so
Yeah.
like this
There's
this this
always
is only
shortcuts.
this is only one tool, right? This is just like the next generation of these things. This isn't going to fundamentally make, yes, it'll make a passing essay potentially, but it's not like it's going to make a great essay. You know, it's not like somebody's going to
Right.
get
Right.
you're getting straight A's out of this, right?
Totally. Man, you know what it does do that's wonderful is cut out the cruft, the design, the everything of websites that deliver us information. It's all gone and reduced to a simple sort of chat um, template. And my real hope is that this destroys the mom blog recipe blogs forever.
Yes.
Because like I had to roast a chicken the other day and I was like, give me a simple roast chicken recipe. I knew exactly what I was looking for, which was just olive oil, salt, and pepper. But I just needed someone to say it real quick and succinctly. And man, it gave it right over to me. I didn't have to deal with any
Oh, that's so good.
interstitials. You
See,
know?
so my hope then is what this can do is that this can now be the way that the different digital assistants source things like recipes. You know what I mean? So when you say, hey Siri, hey Alexa,
Yes.
whatever, like read me a recipe, it won't be the whole preamble that happens on those things. Like
Yes.
honestly, that
Yes.
should be OpenAI's next partnership. Just be like, yes, we will provide the data for these voice assistants for these
Love it.
things.
I found this on the web for Alexa, whatever, like read me a
Shut up, Siri. God damn.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, you wanted to talk about SEO, so that's actually like this is a good segue.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, it's funny. I haven't had to deal with SEO in many years since I was an editor of the website for this magazine, Nutney Reader, and the ownership was really big on maximizing our SEO and would often send us little bits from Danny Sullivan
Yep.
and and other giants of the field of SEO, search engine optimization. And so the idea, of course, being like you use certain keywords in the right places and it will get picked up and maybe put in front of people in Google results or other results. Um, and it got so bad in the 2010s, in my experience, that you were not only asked to create, but you were seeing everywhere content that was so obvious,
Mhm.
like headlines that just made no
What
sense
time does the Super
practically.
Bowl start?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember
Question
that one? That was one of the
blogs.
most that was one of the most
Yes.
famous ones. If you remember that, there was a Huffington Post article that I know the guy who did it, and it was an unexpected thing. It was like, what time does the Super Bowl start? And it became like one of HuffPost's like biggest stories ever, and then sort of ruined and changed a whole genre of headline writing for
Wow.
and type of news writing for a while. But yeah.
Yeah, and it was like as I remember, this is what I remember were the elements. There was your title itself, keywords that were in the title. There were keywords that were used in the first paragraph or a couple paragraphs, and then there were keywords that were linked that had like hyperlinks over them. And then in the HTML, you could actually put keywords.
Yeah. So now it's changed a little bit. You can still do some of that, but there's like metadata stuff. So there are tools, like depending on what platform you're using, like if you're using WordPress, there are a number of different plugins, for SEO on that. Some of the other platforms have their own kind of SEO tools that are built in. Some of them that do things, I think, kind of holistically, and some that do things otherwise. But it is still one of those things where, from what I understand, talking with people who deal with this stuff and whatnot, like there is a certain amount of like keyword stuffing, not just in like the tags and whatnot, but then also in the copy, right? So I think the
Yeah.
biggest negative for SEO for me is that you can read articles and you can totally tell that they were written in such a way to rank highly in Google. Not dissimilar to the recipe blogs, right? Where they do the whole preamble
Yeah.
because they don't just want, they want people to stay on the site. And they're also maybe trying
Yep.
to stop the Google snippets. But so you have to read the whole life story before you can learn how to make the apple pie. I'm like, I don't fucking care. Just give me the recipe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but but there's it changed, like there became this very specific like keyword laden like writing style where if you see the full name of the product mentioned like 6 times, is the reason I really like
Yeah. Yeah.
using country fresh butter is because it does this, why I country fresh butter. I'm like, oh my god, I get it, you want to rank
Yeah.
highly on this
Country
term.
fresh butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I think. That's how I remember everything, is just the stuffing of keywords, and
Mm-hmm.
so it sort of poisoned my sense of what SEO is, because I mean SEO itself is fantastic, right? The idea is, I mean, the idea behind it is fantastic. How can we make sure that content that wouldn't otherwise be in front of you gets in front of you? It's kind of how I thought of it. And I bring this up as a topic because a friend of mine, Danny Glamour, guest a couple of episodes ago, not just friend of the show, former guest. He has a music blog, and he was asking me about SEO, and should I go over to Squarespace or WordPress? And I didn't know what to say because I wasn't sure what was true anymore about SEO, but it's certainly true that it still matters.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, it definitely still matters. And I think that like where you'd want to go would sort of depend. I would focus primarily on like what is the most comfortable thing for him. He has more options, I think, to do better in SEO with WordPress. Although a lot of those plugins cost money and want to do upsells, so it would depend on how much you would want to invest
Mm,
in things, and I don't know like how useful that would be. Squarespace, I think, does a decent job. Substack does not do a great job, although they've gotten better. But that's been actually something that a
interesting.
number of people who use them I've talked to, like I think they've improved actually. Actually, I want to give that a caveat. A year ago, they did not do well. I think they've had to invest a lot in getting better at it, probably because a lot of their writers and people were like, "Hey, I'm not ranking, and my blog used to, rank fairly well." Because
Yeah.
there are things that you can do with your platform to make it rank better and worse. WordPress, the way it's designed, I think because it's so ubiquitous, it's what like 45% of the web or something, has some
Yeah.
built-in tools that are good. And then there are plugins. Like I know there's like Yoast SEO and some other, tools that are free, but again, have like, they want you to pay. I don't know how necessary that is, but those will do a decent enough job of at helping with that, at least walking you through it. It matters, but I don't know like how much the platform he chooses specifically, like if that's going to be like a defining factor one way or another. Like to me, it would be a much bigger deal. Like what's the writing platform you find more comfortable writing in? To me, would be a much bigger
Sure.
choice.
But it seems like music is sort of a good one for SEO, because you're going to say a band's name, you're
Yep.
going to say one or two of their albums names, and just that alone, and it's going to be in the
It's going to be
headline
in the headline.
probably.
And if you have
Yeah,
other things with your tags, if you review or preview or this and that, like it can rank pretty
right.
well. There are also things you can do in terms of like if you can get it in like, and the news results and things like that don't matter as much anymore because Google has changed so much of how they show things. But
Yeah,
the biggest difference, I think the biggest impact on SEO over the last decade compared to the last decade is just if you look at what the Google search results page is now versus 10 years ago, it's incredibly different. Like
mm.
if I search uh give me a band name.
Oh god. Okay, Dillinger 4.
Okay. So when I search Diligent 4, the first like big part of the page is I see photos of the band, I see the Wikipedia page, I see their
Oh
Facebook. Then
right.
I actually see an Angel Fire website. Then below that, I see videos. I see a whole video block. Then I see a block of people also ask. Then I see the Spotify. Then I see the Bandcamp. and then I'm starting to get into related searches and stuff. And then on the sidebar I see songs and I see some other things. So there are, and because it's a band, like they have an albums tab and songs and events and members and videos. So like the
Right.
biggest
Yeah.
change I think for content creators isn't so much even like, okay, like how do I stuff the keywords and rank? It's that the whole way that Google is laid out is very, very different than it was a decade ago. And
Yes.
so you're now
Yes.
competing with a lot of stuff that Google does, which is very different than otherwise. But if I go to news, for instance, and this is what's interesting, and I don't know how many people use this tag, then I see Louder Than War, I see The Aquarian, I see Brooklyn Vegan, which are all No Echo.
Mm-hmm.
These are all music blogs, right? And these are all things,
Yep.
that come
Interesting.
up, in various. I see the Mansfield News Journal. I see various.
These are all, a lot of these are the things that would have come up in a Google
Exactly.
result
Right. But now
before.
now now
Yeah.
you've got to kind of
Okay.
go to that tab. So those things still matter if you're wanting to, people are wanting to look for the latest news and are trained to do that. But the basic things like, the official, like the main Google page at this point to get to your results, like the entire first
Yeah.
page, like the entire first block is, I see their the stuff like it, goes videos people also ask for. It's got the sidebar. Like you're having to scroll quite a bit before you even get to that point. So that's I think that will be a much bigger challenge than I think like what keywords you use or what platform you're on.
Well, and the other thing that's up there now is that little box. It's after, so you have the Dillinger 4 Wikipedia
Mm-hmm.
page, you have their Angel Fire
Which is
site,
amazing.
and then you have people also search for, and it
Yep.
tells you Dillinger 4 merch, Dillinger 4 new album. In the past, that was kind of what it was like to do keyword research, right? You'd just be like,
Yep.
what do people search for when they search Dillinger 4? And now it's like right in front of
Right.
you.
Like where's they from, what
Interesting.
genre are they and whatnot, right? It is interesting though, and I think this is interesting, and I assume it's the band who would have to do this, but like it's interesting to me that you have to basically scroll down, and at this point too, now Google doesn't even have like pages standard. It's just kind of an infinite scroll.
Interesting. Man, what's funny is, even though I see Google every day and have since 10 years ago, it didn't occur to me from a content creator's perspective how different it
Yeah,
is.
and it would, because it's happened subtly, and then it's like everything, like it happens suddenly and then all at once, like slowly and then all at once. That's the phrase, and that's what's kind of happened. At least from my experiences with Google, is that I've noticed these changes over the years, and they've been kind of small things. And then when I really started to kind of take stuff in, I go, oh, wow, yeah, this is a completely different search experience than what I used to have.
Yeah.
And I think a worse one, to be honest. Like at this
Oh, it's
it is.
messy
At
as
this point,
hell.
I append Reddit to most of my searches
I'm just
because
saying that. Yeah.
honestly, I can usually get better, more updated information on stuff. And ironically, like Reddit's search is not super great. And
Right.
so it's but yeah, it's really interesting. The Google search is still like the thing that powers them as a company, and that it is degraded, in my opinion, so much over the last decade, but especially over the last like 5 or 6 years. Um, Even though and I always wonder about like the product teams and the engineering team. Well, the product teams and engineering teams aren't concerned with this, but the product teams, like if their focus has been solely like on money and on other things, and not, they're clearly not focused on the experience, because if they were,
Yeah.
then I don't think that they would have things as cluttered and whatnot. But it is interesting, is like you can see them trying to kind of monopolize the experience, whereas like Google used to
Yes.
not be that way, where now it's almost like they really want like to monopolize the experience as much as possible. So unless you're looking for
Mm-hmm.
something very specific, you're not going to be getting maybe more organic results.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Man. Okay. Before we do
Yes.
gratitude, I have a Twitter
Yes.
question for you. As you are a dedicated Twitter user
Mhm.
over time, you said that you had a little bit of a break when you were traveling. But I'm curious for you, how post Elon Twitter is as an experience for you. Have you noticed people disappearing, or is it basically how it
No,
felt,
it's
or
it's
what?
different. It's worse. Like I haven't had like the, the more negative kind of experiences went up. But I've noticed a lot of my friends, people who you don't think about it a lot, but you're like, oh, I haven't seen so and so, and you're like, oh, they're on Mastodon now. It's like, okay, all right, well, I got to go
Yeah.
into that, and Mastodon is just, I just don't like it. I like what it stands for. I
Yeah.
just don't like the
Yeah.
interface, and I find it hard to kind of deal with all the various things, but you miss out on stuff. I've also noticed like one of the big changes, because they fired like all the staff, like a lot of the curation and things like that used to happen is not really there anymore. I definitely, the ads are worse. It's
Yeah.
and everybody's meaner, everybody's mad, like whether they like Elon or not. Like it just seems like it went from a place where everybody was sort of pissed off, but kind of hiding it, to now it's like almost feels actively antagonistic at times, which is really a shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sucks. It sucks to
Sucks.
see, I think, what was my very favorite social network really just devolve in a lot of ways. And but I haven't found another home. I mean, I need to invest more time in Mastodon. I get that. It's just, it's hard for me to kind of live both places, and figuring out what instances you want to be on, things you see. Because one of my favorite things is being able to see stuff organically, which you don't see the same
Yeah.
way with Mastodon, because of its decentralized nature, which I get it, but it's just not. Um, I like, sometimes I think we needed a centralized thing, but like yeah.
I
Sorry, go on.
mean, go
No,
ahead. Well, I was on Twitter this morning, and this a nurse had posted and just said, "All right, let's create a thread about all the experiences we've had to have in hallways in our hospitals in the last year." And it was this long thread of nurses chiming in, and it was incredibly illuminating. It was an instant access into a community that is very hard to have access to, especially in ways that are sort of open and comfortable and talking about their experiences. And I was like, God damn it, that's what Twitter is. And I don't know how easy it will be for that to be possible on Mastodon.
yeah, yeah, it wouldn't be, and that I think is to me is the problem. And look, that's sort of by design, and that's okay. But that's also, I think, to the people who are really big fans of Mastodon, I think you have to concede that that is an ultimate, like that is a trade off. Like it is a trade
Yeah.
off. And there's no way to get around that. But there are a lot of people who I think don't want to acknowledge that there's any trade off with Mastodon at all. And it's like, no, but there is, because you have to choose your instances, and you have a difference of who can see what, and that's great. You have that privacy, but it also means
Sure, it's
it
wonderful in its
is,
own way.
but it's a
Yeah.
very different experience. And for people who use things, like way a lot of communities have used Twitter, there isn't a replacement, and that's a shame. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still on Twitter, but I'm just, it's a worse experience. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm late to the game, saying I'm sad to see it go, but it does seem like it's going.
Yeah, same.
uh, I'll be honest, there was a part of me, I'm a Twitter reader quite a bit, used to tweet a lot, do not in a long time, but I was kind of like, I think everybody's gonna come back. Because like
Yeah,
it always
it
happens,
does.
Nothing as big as this, but
Right. Well, I mean, people usually do, but I don't know. The only thing that bothers me is that there's been a tonal shift. Like there's been just a tonal shift in the rigor. And so people will, I don't think that Mastodon takes off. Again, this was always my fear, was not that, like, my biggest fear is kind of coming true, which is like, you don't want to see it just kind of slowly like devolve into something shittier. Because I think that rather than a lot of people
yeah.
migrating to something else, you would have people just opt out, or go to more siloed places, go to Discords, go to Reddits, go to, Signal groups. Rather than going to one platform, people are just going to, dissipate. And that is a problem. Do I think
Yeah.
a lot of people will come back? Yeah, I do. But I also think there are a lot of people who were casual users, and the casual users I don't think are coming back. Like at one point, Elon
Yeah.
had said that he'd wanted to bring the celebrities back, and I was like, that ship has sailed years ago. Like the Trump era,
Yeah.
they were not going to be there. Like when the Leslie Jones stuff happened, like they were kind of gone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it was proving, when things were
Yep.
toxic in that era, if I were if I were managing a celebrity's career, I don't know if I would be right now. I certainly would not be telling them they need to have a Twitter account. I'd say you need a TikTok, you need an Instagram, you might need a YouTube channel. I don't know if you need a Twitter, and if you do, it could probably be run by someone else, right? Whereas part of the
Right.
power of Twitter, and what sustained it for a really long time, was that these culturally significant people, or not culture, and if not culturally significant, then like people that were deemed important, like journalists, celebrities, newsmakers, whatnot, were on it and were actually engaging as themselves. That was always the power of it,
Yeah.
right? That was always the power of
That
it.
was amazing.
And that's the thing that like Facebook never really had that, right? When they did pages, it always felt corporatized. Whereas Twitter was always like, it is the real person, right? But a lot of the celebrities like left Twitter, and Instagram really did step in for a long time and kind of took on the mantle, but now it's even more so. And Instagram, you don't have to have that one-on-one thing. Like you can reply to comments and you can DM people, but it's not the same thing. You can't repost. I mean, they've talked about this thing. It's a different experience. It is much more of a one-to-many thing, whereas like Twitter, I think, was really unique in that you could truly kind of have a back and forth with people, and you would see people get addicted to it in a different way, right? Like you would see people really actively use Twitter in a way that you don't actively use some of the other things. And I just it's a shame to see. I mean, it's been on the decline for a while, but if the goal was to bring the famous people back, that certainly I don't think is going to happen. And if anything, I think the other casual users are probably gone too, and that's to me probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it's a drag. All right. Well, it's Graptitude time.
It is Graptitude time.
And our Graptitudes, I believe, are on a theme. On a theme of Pacer.
Yes.
The federal court's document access system, which is clunky as shit. It's like built with sticks and stones and trying
CGI
to get documents
and CGI
out of it.
scripts, Perl scripts. I'm not even joking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good stuff. It's a museum. They're trying to honor our roots, the roots of the web. And in that case, that's wonderful. I interface with Pacer as a journalist and as a researcher. Usually going in to find a specific case. Back in the day, I might filter so that I could just, if that was my beat on the courts or something, I would just kind of watch what came in. In fact, there were Pacer computers at the government center downtown. When I never worked for a place that could pay for Pacer, so I would go down there and you could use the computer for free.
Okay, because I always like had to expense my stuff, and like you get like because for listeners who don't know, everybody gets, I think you get like $25 a quarter or something. Because each search costs money and each page is 10 cents a page, and
each page is 10
cents. There is a document limit, I think, on like how much they can charge you, but there's not like a limit on per case or anything. So you could spend, and I have spent, I'm sure you have, like hundreds of dollars on individual cases and researchers.
Easily.
Like it's very expensive. And everybody has to pay this. Like a lot of this is there's been a whole movement to try to like make Pacer free. It was even part of the ombudsman bill or whatever. Obviously it did not go through, and we knew it would not. Because the filing fees, because what's dumb about it to me is it's like and actually I just logged into it for the first time. The website's been updated recently. It looks good.
They've made a few changes.
Some of the individual courts are still awful. Most of them, a lot of them, but some of them are really bad. And not everything is on Pacer. Like you have the federal courts, but then you have to go through similar but unrelated systems. Like if I wanted to go to like the Seattle court systems, like it the whole thing is a nightmare. But but it costs money, and for it's also expensive for lawyers. So for people who are doing pro bono work, or who are public defenders, like there's a very real cost to getting all the documents related to a case for their clients. Sorry, go on.
Right. No, it's a huge pain in the ass. And I have been using a service for a while, which is my Graptitude, called Pacer Pro, which is not related to Pacer, that at least makes the navigation of Pacer painless. You're still paying as you download things. In fact, they make it easier to spend a lot of money because they have a great bulk download
Nice.
feature. You know, if you're just like, give me all this stuff, which is how I like to do it. And they have a kind of watch your cases feature that's really nice. I get an email every time there's an update in certain cases I care about. You know, there's a fee to use it above and beyond Pacer
Hmm.
itself, but it's, I mean, when I first saw Pacer Pro, I was like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. And I love it. And so if anybody out there does any kind of research using cases, I highly recommend you go through Pacer Pro. It's really made for
Yeah, I was gonna
lawyers and
say I'm
stuff.
looking.
You can submit
Yeah,
through it,
no, exactly.
you
No, I was
know.
looking at it, and it's smart, right? And they charge it looks like $30 per seat a month if you're 1 to 4, and it's lower as you go up. And so I can imagine, like, if I were
Yep.
like, because you have to imagine if you're even a mid-sized law firm, your pacer fees are already exorbitant a month. Your time is worth whatever the fees would be for giving you a better interface,
Totally.
because they've modernized it a little bit. It's better than it used to be, but it's still really hard to find things. And then the problem is, as you said, you can do the bulk download, which is good. But the problem is, uh, at least this is what I've run into, and I don't have as much experience as you do, but I've spent a lot of time with Pacer over the years, and I've spent a lot of
Yeah.
money on things by doing bad searches, or by searching the
Totally.
wrong frame and whatnot, because again, it costs money to do. And you
Yep.
don't think about it like in a kind of our Google era. You're not thinking, oh, 10 cents at a time. It's like, no, okay. And now I've opened up this file and I realized that I've downloaded this document, and it turns out that it was just like, some sort of something inconsequential to the case. Okay, well, that just
Yeah.
was a few dollars. And so having ways around that, I think, is probably really, really good. Um and I love this. It's interesting to me that there haven't been more companies who've done this, but I think this is really smart of them. I'm assuming they've just probably, they basically were like, Pacer's broken, we're just going to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can actually have them send you a PDF. Like if a document has just been
Yep.
filed, the second
See,
it's
that I
on
love,
Pacer, it'll
because I
send
used
it
to I
to
used to
you.
use I used
It's
to use
just
a tool
like,
called Pacer Watcher, or I think that's what it was called. And
oh,
it stopped working at a certain point, but I used to do that, where I used to monitor certain cases, because in journalism, it's very important to oftentimes get access to those things as soon as they go up, especially if you're competing with a lot of other people on a story. But also, it can just be useful just to have in
right.
general. And Pacer does not have a way. I think if you're a lawyer, if you're a party to the case, you would get notified, but otherwise, like, you don't. And so you they have to be all these third party, like, alert systems that work. So that's awesome that Pacer
Yeah,
Pro does that, because that right there would be worth the money if you're somebody who's following a lot of cases, especially an
totally.
active case, right? Like, that's definitely
Yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
things.
I also see now that if nonprofits and academics can maybe get
Yeah, I just
complimentary
saw that.
access, so
I was
maybe
looking at
I'll
that. I was
give
like,
it a
ooh, you
shot.
should reach out to them about that. Um, but
What's your
so
Pacer?
my pick, so Pacer Pro is your pick. My pick. Speaking of Pacer, there is a Chrome extension called Recap, which is Pacer spelled backwards. And it
I'm
is
back.
from the what is it called? It's from the Freedom. It's from the Free Law Project. I believe. Let me. Who is it from? Let me see the actual
Ouch.
edit. Okay, so this is from the Free Law Project, which is a 501(c) nonprofit, and it's a service basically known as Court Listener. So if you go to courtlistener.com/recap, you can go there. There's also a Chrome extension, which is really, really good. And what this does is it lets you search millions of different cases by name, and you can find, it'll basically give you the whole docket of a case. And then what it'll do is that it has this thing called their recap archive, where if somebody has downloaded it before and has uploaded it to their service, then you can go ahead and access the document. So for a lot of bigger cases, you can have access to everything. And so what's nice about the extension is that it automates the process, that when you download a file from Pacer, it will automatically upload it to the recap archive. And so you're kind of helping everyone. So it's one of those things where, like, in my opinion, all
Awesome.
this stuff should be free. or at least be much more subsidized than it
Yeah.
is. Like, I'm not saying that there's not a cost to some of this stuff. And so if you want to charge a quarterly one-off fee of $25, like, I would be fine with that. But I think that the 10 cents a page stuff, I mean, it's absolutely it's absolutely unreal, like how much money they're getting out of this stuff, and it's especially for how bad the software is. So what's great about the extension is that it basically will help you continue to help other people get access to stuff, and upload past things, because I make a point anytime I'm looking stuff up, because a lot of, at this point, most of the reason I'm looking at things is for like just pure like nosiness or interest or like personal research. It's not like I'm doing things for journalism. But even when I was in journalism, it's like, okay, if I'm going through this, then I want somebody else to be able to do this too. The extension is also available for Firefox, and so I think that and it's on GitHub, which is great. So I think that this is really, really good, just to be able to kind of give back and use Court Listener to get access. Obviously, not every case is going to be there, but more high profile cases usually are. And so, search there first. Like, before you pay for Pacer to download something, like, search Court Listener to see if they've got it, because in many cases they do.
And their archive has an API for me to plug into ChatGPT.
Oh, shit. That's badass.
That's great. They have
I knew they had an API, but I hadn't even thought about that. That's really awesome. Yeah, they have an API, which could be good for a lot of reasons, right? So, anyway,
awesome.
So also support the Free Law Project. They're really good.
Yes, that's awesome. Awesome. That's our gratitude. We got carried away talking about resolutions, and I just want to mention Brett won't be with us this week.
That's right. We didn't even like mention that. Yeah, this is just a Christina and Jeff show. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Morning drive time. All right. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
When the time is appropriate, get some sleep.
Yes, get some sleep, Jeff.
Thank you.
The system is going down low.